Let's be honest, India's global rise might just be the world's longest-running joke. You've probably heard it for decades. India is the next big thing, the next superpower, the next China. And yet, here we are, in 2025, and the next big thing is still waiting to happen. While India is busy selling slogans, the rest of the world has quietly moved on, especially China and Russia, who just pulled off something that could change global trade forever, the new Northern Sea Route. This new trade corridor runs across the Arctic, a shipping route that literally cuts travel time from Asia to Europe in half. A container ship recently sailed from Ningbo, China, to Felixstowe, United Kingdom, in just 20 days. That's less than half the time it takes to go through the Suez Canal, which usually takes around 40 to 50 days. The future of global trade is now sailing through icy northern waters. And guess who's not invited to the party? That's right, India. For years, India dreamed of being the heart of global trade, calling itself the next manufacturing hub, the center of the Indo-Pacific. But this new northern route doesn't even come close to India's coastline. It's like the world just built a brand new highway, and India got left standing on the old dirt road, waving as everyone zooms past. The Northern Sea Route is basically China and Russia's masterstroke. Climate change has made the Arctic more navigable, and both countries saw an opportunity. While others were busy arguing about politics and emissions, Beijing and Moscow were busy building ice-class ships, nuclear-powered icebreakers, and Arctic ports. Now, they've got a working route that links Asia and Europe faster than anything before. The ship that went from Ningbo to the United Kingdom wasn't just carrying containers, it was carrying a message. Global trade is shifting north, away from the Indian Ocean, away from the Suez and Malacca bottlenecks, and away from India's sphere of influence. You see, India has always imagined itself as a middleman between East and West, strategically sitting between Europe and Asia. But if ships can just zip across the Arctic without ever going near India, that whole narrative collapses. The so-called Make in India dream suddenly looks like mist in India. And the irony is, while China and Russia are developing advanced Arctic routes, India still can't fix potholes in its own highways, and still can't provide toilets for everyone. Imagine talking about being a future superpower while still struggling with basic infrastructure. But this isn't just about shipping lanes, it's about geopolitical relevance. The Northern Sea Route represents a new axis of power, Russia providing the Arctic access, China providing the industrial might, and Europe providing the customer market. It's a triangle India simply doesn't fit into. Instead, India finds itself awkwardly standing in the corner, waving its arms, trying to get attention. But the truth is, the world isn't listening. Let's mention politics for a second. Remember when Modi rushed to congratulate Donald Trump the moment he won the 2024 election? He was one of the first leaders to do so, practically sprinted to Washington, all smiles and hugs, calling it the start of a golden friendship. And what did India get in return? Tariffs, massive ones. Trump slapped 50% tariffs on Indian goods. 50%. That's not exactly how you treat your so-called ally. It's how you treat a country you want to remind of its place, like a misbehaving dog. And the humiliation didn't stop there. Trump forced India to buy expensive American oil and gas, along with overpriced military gear that India didn't even really need. It was like forcing someone to buy bottled water while standing next to a well. And just when Modi thought the friendship couldn't get any worse, Trump's administration started tightening immigration rules, sending back thousands of Indian workers and students, sometimes with barely any warning. People who had built lives in the US suddenly found themselves chained like cattle and kicked out. Not because they did anything wrong, most of them probably didn't, but because they were politically convenient scapegoats. It was a humiliating reality check for a country that thought it had finally earned America's respect. That's the pattern though, isn't it? India keeps chasing validation from the West, but the West never really treats it as an equal. The US, the UK, Europe, they all love India's big speeches about democracy and freedom, but when it comes to serious partnerships, they all quietly look the other way. The so-called Quad Alliance, India, the United States, Japan, and Australia, was hyped up as a strategic powerhouse to counter China. But let's be honest, it's mostly just talk. The United States is busy with its own issues, Japan is cautious, Australia plays both sides and trades massively with China, and India, well, India can't even produce its own fighter jet engines reliably, not exactly the Avengers of geopolitics. Meanwhile, Russia and China are out there actually building things. Ports, railways, icebreakers, energy pipelines, and now Arctic trade routes. India, by contrast, is still organizing summits, where people storm the lunch buffet for some free curry, and talk about ancient civilization pride. And let's not forget how isolated India is in its own neighborhood. Pakistan, eternal hostility. Bangladesh, growing tired of India's arrogance. Sri Lanka, still holding grudges from how India meddled in its civil war. Nepal, constantly annoyed by border disputes. Even the Maldives recently started pushing back, telling India to stop treating them like a backyard colony. India likes to call itself the voice of the global south, but, increasingly, even the global south isn't listening. Because honestly, what's the point of being the loudest voice in the room when nobody's taking you seriously? And then there's China. Oh, the irony. India tries to copy China's playbook, manufacturing, infrastructure, nationalism, but, without any of the discipline or results. China builds good quality high-speed rail lines across frozen tundra. India can barely finish a metro line without years of delay. China has a plan that spans decades. India has slogans that last until the next election. Even in diplomacy, China has outmaneuvered India completely. Beijing doesn't waste time bragging about being the world's largest democracy. It just does business, quietly, effectively, and strategically. India, meanwhile, keeps trying to be everyone's friend but ends up being nobody's priority. And yes, China and India have been publicly friendly lately. But let's not kid ourselves, that's just politics and PR. The scars of the Galwan Valley haven't faded. That border clash 5 years ago was a brutal reminder that China doesn't see India as a peer. It sees it as a problem to be managed, a nuisance. And right now, China is managing that problem by simply ignoring India's importance altogether. While India obsesses over symbolic gestures like changing street names or building massive statues, China is building ships, roads, satellites, and now Arctic trade routes. It's not even a competition anymore. It's an entirely different league. And this new Northern Sea route is the perfect symbol of that difference. China and Russia are not just changing geography. They're changing economics, strategy, and power. The world's trade arteries are shifting northward, literally bypassing India. That means less relevance for India's ports, less influence in global shipping, and fewer opportunities to play the Indo-Pacific card. Remember the Suez Canal? For decades, it was the world's critical link between Asia and Europe. India benefited from that, geographically, politically, economically. Now, with the Northern Sea route emerging, that advantage disappears. Cargo that once passed near India can now reach Europe faster without ever coming close. That's not just a loss of trade, that's a loss of strategic leverage. India has always depended on geography for relevance. But when technology and infrastructure rewrite geography itself, what's left? And the most painful part is that India had every opportunity to join this new era. It could have collaborated with Russia on Arctic exploration years ago. It could have invested in polar research or partnered in shipping innovations. But it didn't. Because New Delhi was too busy trying to impress Washington and London, countries that barely even pretend to take India seriously anymore. Instead, India now finds itself in a weird geopolitical no man's land. It's not aligned with the West, it's not trusted by the East, and it's surrounded by neighbors who'd rather keep their distance. The Northern Sea route is just one example of how the global economy is evolving without India's input, or even its awareness. So, when you hear politicians in New Delhi shouting about becoming a Vishwaguru, a world teacher, maybe ask, who's actually listening to the lecture? Because from where the rest of the world stands, India looks less like a teacher and more like a student who keeps failing the same subject. In the end, the rise of the Northern Sea route isn't just a shipping story. It's a symbol of who's moving forward and who's being left behind. While China and Russia are literally redrawing the world's trade map, India is busy redrawing old colonial borders on paper and calling it progress. Maybe the world doesn't hate India. Maybe it just doesn't need India anymore. And that's the real tragedy. Not being despised, but being ignored.